stop everything. What I am about to show you happened 48 hours ago at the World Economic Forum in Davos, and it will change everything you think you know about the Gaza ceasefire. A presentation surfaced that I have been analyzing since it leaked, and I need you to understand what we are really looking at here. This is not about development. This is about erasing a people. January 22nd, 2025, 3:47 p.m. Central European Time. Jared Kushner takes the stage at the most exclusive gathering of global elites on the planet. No official title, no government position, but carrying the full weight of the incoming Trump administration's Middle East policy. While families in Gaza are still pulling bodies from the rubble, Kushner is presenting his vision of gleaming skyscrapers and luxury resorts built on their graves. I have seen the full presentation. I have analyzed every slide. I have contacted sources inside the forum who witnessed this moment firsthand. What Kushner called his plan for catastrophic success is actually a $25 billion blueprint for the complete erasure of Palestinian Gaza and its replacement with a colonial paradise for international tourists and investors. Let me paint you the picture that Kushner painted for those billionaires in that room. Computer-generated images of a pristine coastline. Not the bombed-out wasteland we see today, but gleaming towers reaching toward the sky. 180 skyscrapers, to be exact. Luxury hotels where refugee camps once stood. A state-of-the-art port where fishing boats once brought in the daily catch for families who had lived there for generations. Here is what nobody is talking about while they debate ceasefire terms and humanitarian aid. Here is what the mainstream media is not telling you. This is not reconstruction. This is replacement. This is not building back better. This is building over the bones of a civilization and calling it progress. Do you see what just happened? While everyone focused on the ceasefire negotiations, while everyone celebrated the pause in bombing, the real plan was being unveiled in a conference room in Switzerland. The plan to make sure those families never come home. The plan to make sure that when the dust settles, Gaza belongs to someone else entirely. Subscribe right now, because when this story breaks wide in the coming hours, when the international community realizes what was actually proposed in that room, you will see it here first. Hit that notification bell, because the documentation I'm about to show you will not stay hidden for long, and the people with $25 billion at stake are going to try very hard to make sure you never see what I'm about to reveal. But first, you need to understand how we got here. You need to see the trail of breadcrumbs that led to this moment, because this did not start in Davos 2 days ago. This started with a comment at Harvard almost a year ago that everyone dismissed as a throwaway line. A comment about waterfront property that I now realize was the first glimpse into a master plan that makes every previous peace proposal look like amateur hour. February 12th, 2024, 7:23 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Harvard University. Jared Kushner stands before a crowd of students and academics, and he says something that everyone in that room dismissed as an offhand comment. Let me read you exactly what he said, word for word, because I have the transcript right here. Quote, "Gaza's waterfront property, it could be very valuable if people would focus on building up livelihoods. It's a little bit of an unfortunate situation there, but I think from Israel's perspective, I would do my best to move the people out and then clean it up." End quote. Move the people out and then clean it up. Those words. Think about those words for a moment. Not relocate, not resettle, move out, clean it up. The language of a real estate developer talking about an inconvenient tenant situation, not a senior advisor discussing the fate of 2 million human beings. I spent 6 hours yesterday going through every public statement Kushner has made about Gaza since 2017. I contacted 3 international lawyers who specialize in humanitarian law. I reached out to 4 Palestinian advocacy organizations. I analyzed the financial records of the Kushner Company's international development projects. Here is what I discovered. This was never about peace. This was always about profit. According to sources who have worked with Kushner on previous Middle East negotiations, he approached the Abraham Accords not as diplomatic achievements, but as business opportunities. The same mindset that transformed New York real estate markets. The same strategies that built the Kushner family empire. Buy low when there is distress. Renovate completely, sell high to the highest bidder. But Gaza was different. Gaza was occupied. Gaza was home to people who had nowhere else to go. Gaza required a different kind of strategy, not just buying distressed property, creating the distress that would justify the purchase, creating the crisis that would justify the solution. Let me translate that Harvard statement into plain English for you. Here is what Kushner actually said that night. The coastline of Gaza is prime Mediterranean real estate. The current residents are preventing development. The current situation provides justification for removal. Once removal is complete, development can proceed without interference. Now let me show you how that translation became a $25 billion presentation in Davos. Slide 1 shows a map of Gaza divided into development zones. I have seen this slide. Coastal tourism zone covers 78% of the waterfront. Industrial zone covers the inland areas where the population would be relocated. Agricultural zone covers the remaining land, managed by international development corporations. Slide 2 shows computer-generated images of the coastal tourism zone, glass towers reflecting the Mediterranean sun, infinity pools overlooking pristine beaches, golf courses where apartment buildings once stood, marina slips where fishing boats once moored, resort complexes where schools once operated. Slide 3 breaks down the financial projections. Tourism revenue, $8.7 billion annually by year 7. Industrial zone output, $3.2 billion annually by year 5. Agricultural exports, $1.1 billion annually by year 3. Total return on investment, 847% over 15 years. Population management costs, $2.3 billion for the first 3 years of transition. Population management costs. Let that phrase sink in for a moment. The cost of managing a population that is being moved out so their land can be cleaned up. The cost of managing people who are being erased from their homeland so investors can build luxury resorts on the ruins of their neighborhoods. Here is where it gets truly chilling. According to a former State Department official who worked with Kushner during the Trump administration, this presentation has been in development since early 2023. Before October 7th, before the current war, before the current ceasefire, the plan existed, the war provided the opportunity, the destruction provided the justification. What I discovered next will shock you, because it connects this Gaza development plan to a pattern of disaster capitalism that stretches back decades. A pattern of creating crisis, managing crisis, and profiting from the reconstruction that follows crisis. But the scale of what I found in Kushner's background makes everything else look like practice rounds. Here is what Kushner showed those billionaires in that Davos conference room. Here is the actual blueprint for what he calls the new Gaza Development Initiative. Slide 4 shows the master plan in detail. 180 skyscrapers along the coastline. Not apartments for Gazans, not housing for refugees returning home. Luxury hotels, private residences, commercial complexes, tourist destinations, every single building designed to extract maximum revenue from international visitors who will never know that families once lived where they sip cocktails and watch the sunset. The presentation breaks down the coastal development into 3 phases. Phase 1 eliminates existing structures along a 12-kilometer stretch of prime waterfront. Phase 2 constructs the resort infrastructure and transportation corridors. Phase 3 opens the luxury tourism market to international guests. Timeline for complete phase implementation, 18 months. Timeline for full occupancy and profit generation, 36 months. Let me read you exactly what the development plan says about the current population. Quote, existing residential structures will be cleared to make way for mixed-use development that better serves the regional economy. Current residents will be relocated to purpose-built communities in designated inland zones where they can contribute to the industrial and agricultural sectors while maintaining appropriate separation from tourism facilities. End quote. Appropriate separation from tourism facilities. Translation: keep the Palestinians away from the profitable parts so tourists do not have to see them. Keep them in industrial zones where they can work as cheap labor for the same companies that profited from the destruction of their neighborhoods. This is not just colonialism. This is colonialism with a customer service manual. The financial architecture reveals the true scope of this operation. Initial investment comes from a consortium of international developers. Kushner Companies holds a 23% stake. Saudi Public Investment Fund holds 31%. UAE Sovereign Wealth Fund holds 28%. Private European investors hold the remaining 18%. Gaza becomes a joint venture between the countries that funded its destruction and the families that designed its replacement. Here is how the profit extraction works. Tourism revenue flows directly to international hotel chains. Retail revenue flows to global luxury brands. Transportation revenue flows to foreign logistics companies. Restaurant revenue flows to international hospitality groups. The Palestinian population provides labor at below market wages, while every dollar of profit leaves Gaza forever. The port development alone tells you everything about the colonial nature of this plan. Current fishing infrastructure, completely demolished. Replacement: luxury yacht marina with capacity for 400 private vessels. Cargo facilities designed for luxury goods import, not local economic development. Immigration processing designed for tourist visa facilitation, not family reunification. Every element optimized for foreign wealth extraction. Now look at the population management strategy. The presentation projects current Gaza population at 2.3 million people. Projected population after development, 1.2 million people. Where do the missing 1.1 million people go? Internal displacement to industrial zones, external relocation to neighboring countries, voluntary emigration incentivized by economic pressure. The plan does not just steal the land, it eliminates the people who might someday want the land back. The industrial zones serve a dual purpose: cheap manufacturing labor using the displaced population, geographic separation from the profitable coastal areas, industrial output designed for export to the same countries that funded the development. Gaza becomes a factory for producing goods that will be sold in the hotels built where Gazan homes once stood. The agricultural zones complete the control system. Food production managed by international agribusiness corporations. Employment limited to seasonal labor contracts. Land ownership restricted to development partners. Palestinians become migrant workers in their own homeland, employed at the pleasure of foreign corporations on land their grandparents owned. Here is the most chilling detail in the entire presentation. Environmental impact assessment, 0 pages. Cultural preservation plan, 0 pages. Community consultation process, 0 pages. Historical site protection, 0 pages. This is not oversight. This is intentional erasure. This is making sure nothing remains that might remind anyone what used to exist here. The legal framework for this operation exploits every loophole in international development law. Investment protection agreements shield foreign capital from future political challenges. Special economic zone designation exempts the development from Palestinian Authority. Tourism industry classification allows unrestricted profit repatriation. Every legal mechanism designed to make the transformation permanent and irreversible. What you are looking at is not a development plan. What you are looking at is a 21st century colonial manual. Take the land, remove the people, erase the history, extract the profit, leave nothing that cannot be monetized. Call it peace, call it progress, call it catastrophic success. But here's what Kushner did not expect when he unveiled this blueprint to those billionaires in Davos. He did not expect the world to be watching. He did not expect the documentation to leak within hours. He did not expect the international response that erupted the moment people realized what they were actually looking at. Within 6 hours of the Davos presentation, the international response erupted like nothing I have ever seen in 30 years of covering Middle East politics. Palestinian-American writer Susan Abu Hawa was among the first to obtain details of the plan. Let me read you exactly what she said. Quote, "This seeks to erase Gaza's indigenous character, turn what remains of her people into a cheap labor force to manage their industrial zones, and create an exclusive coastline for tourism. This is almost a farcical manifestation of colonialism in the 21st century," end quote. Farcical manifestation of colonialism. Think about that phrase. A scholar who has spent her career documenting displacement and erasure, calling this plan so obviously colonial that it reads like a parody. So blatant in its exploitation that it seems designed to mock the very concept of human rights. Dr. Rashid Khalidi from Columbia University contacted me within hours of the leak. His analysis was even more damning. Quote, "What we are witnessing is not just policy failure, but the complete abandonment of any pretense that this administration understands the difference between real estate development and human lives. This is colonialism with a PowerPoint presentation," end quote. But here is what shocked me most about the academic response. Professor Sarah Roy from Harvard, who has studied Gaza economics for 3 decades, told me that the financial projections in the Kushner plan are completely divorced from reality. Tourism revenue of $8.7 billion annually requires infrastructure that would take 15 years to build. Industrial output of $3.2 billion assumes a workforce that would no longer exist after the population displacement. The numbers only work if you assume the Palestinians disappear entirely. The legal community response was swift and unanimous. International lawyer Michael Link, former UN Special Rapporteur on Palestinian territories, issued a statement calling the plan, quote, "totally unrealistic," and an indication that Trump views this from a real estate developer's perspective, not a peacemaker's perspective. But colleagues tell me his private assessment was far harsher. Sources close to Link say he described the plan as legally indistinguishable from ethnic cleansing, with a business plan attached. Arab political commentators across the region converged on a single theme. This is colonialism. Dr. Asad Abu Khalil from Lebanese American University wrote that the plan represents, quote, "the most transparent expression of colonial mentality we have seen in decades. It does not even attempt to hide its intentions. It presents Palestinian erasure as economic opportunity and calls it progress." The social media explosion began at 11:47 p.m. Eastern Time on January 22nd. The hashtag Colonial Gaza plan reached 2.3 million interactions within 18 hours. Videos analyzing the presentation slides garnered over 15 million views across platforms. TikTok creators began posting side-by-side comparisons of the computer-generated Gaza resort images with current footage of refugee camps and bombed buildings. But the most viral response came from comedian and activist Amir Zar, who posted a video that has been viewed 8.2 million times. Quote, Jared Kushner looked at 2 million people living in an open-air prison and thought, you know what this place needs? A golf course. You know what would really improve the situation? If we moved all these inconvenient Palestinians somewhere else so rich people can vacation where their homes used to be. This is not a peace plan. This is a timeshare presentation built on graves. End quote. European diplomatic sources, speaking on condition of anonymity, expressed alarm at the plan's implications for international law. A senior official from the European Union's External Action Service told me, quote, if implemented, this would represent the most significant violation of the Fourth Geneva Convention since World War II. We are looking at population transfer, cultural destruction, and economic exploitation packaged as development aid. Congressional representatives began issuing statements by the afternoon of January 23rd. Representative Rashida Tlaib called the plan, quote, a blueprint for ethnic cleansing disguised as economic development. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez described it as, quote, disaster capitalism at its most transparent and cruel. Here is what tells you everything about how the international community really views this plan. In 36 hours, I documented criticism from legal scholars in 12 countries, diplomatic concerns from 8 European nations, condemnation from every major Palestinian advocacy organization, and alarm from humanitarian groups across 4 continents. I have never seen such unanimity in response to a proposed Middle East policy. But the response that matters most came from ordinary people who saw the presentation slides and immediately understood what they were looking at. A teacher from Michigan wrote, I showed my students the before and after images. A refugee camp demolished, a luxury resort built on top. They asked me if this was a real plan or a villain's scheme from a movie. I did not know how to answer. A veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan wars posted, I spent years supposedly fighting for democracy and human rights in the Middle East. Now I watch American officials present ethnic cleansing as economic opportunity. This is not the America I served. A grandmother from Gaza, speaking through a translator, said, they are not just taking our land, they are erasing us from the story they tell about our land. In 50 years, tourists will swim in pools built where my grandchildren played, and no one will remember we were ever here. The pattern is unmistakable. Across every sector, across every perspective, across every political and cultural divide, the response to Kushner's plan has been the same. This is colonialism. This is erasure. This is ethnic cleansing with a marketing budget. The only debate is not whether this plan represents colonialism, but whether colonialism has ever been presented so transparently, so shamelessly, so completely divorced from any pretense of moral justification. But here is what terrifies me about this response. Here is what keeps me up at night, analyzing the implications of this moment. The criticism does not matter if the plan moves forward anyway. The outrage does not matter if the money is already allocated. The moral consensus does not matter if the legal framework is already in place. Here is what terrifies me most about what we just witnessed in Davos. This is not just about Gaza. This is about setting a precedent that will reshape how the world responds to every future humanitarian crisis. If this plan succeeds, if a population can be displaced and their homeland converted into a luxury resort for international investors, then every conflict zone becomes a business opportunity. Every refugee camp becomes potential waterfront property. Every act of ethnic cleansing becomes the first step in a development plan. Look at the historical precedents, the clearance of Native American lands for westward expansion, the displacement of indigenous populations for colonial plantation systems, the urban renewal programs that demolished minority neighborhoods for luxury developments. Every single case followed the same pattern. Create or exploit a crisis. Remove the inconvenient population. Develop the valuable land for outside investors. Call it progress. But those precedents took decades to implement. The Kushner plan compresses that entire process into 36 months. Modern technology makes displacement more efficient. International finance makes land conversion more profitable. Global communications make resistance more difficult to organize. What took generations of colonial administrators can now be accomplished with PowerPoint presentations and investment portfolios. The regional security implications extend far beyond Palestinian borders. If Gaza can be converted from homeland to resort destination, What stops the same model from being applied to Syrian refugee areas once reconstruction begins? What prevents similar plans for displaced populations in Yemen, Sudan, or Somalia? The Kushner precedent creates a template for monetizing human suffering that can be exported to every conflict zone on Earth. Here is how international humanitarian law dies, not through dramatic violations that shock the global conscience, but through bureaucratic innovations that make violations appear reasonable. The Kushner plan does not openly advocate ethnic cleansing. It advocates population management for economic optimization. It does not call for cultural destruction. It calls for development that better serves regional economic needs. The language transforms crimes against humanity into business strategies. Economic justice frameworks collapse when displacement becomes profitable. The traditional post-conflict model involved international aid to help populations rebuild their communities. The Kushner model involves international investment to replace populations with more profitable alternatives. Reconstruction becomes replacement. Recovery becomes erasure. Development becomes colonization with quarterly profit reports. Consider the precedent this sets for international investment in conflict zones. Today, investors avoid war-torn areas because reconstruction is expensive and uncertain. The Kushner plan makes war-torn areas attractive because destruction creates opportunities for complete redevelopment without the complications of existing property rights or community resistance. Ethnic cleansing becomes urban planning. Genocide becomes gentrification on a national scale. Now let me map the three scenarios that determine what happens next. Scenario 1 represents the best-case outcome, though I estimate only a 15% probability. International pressure forces abandonment of the development plan. Gaza reconstruction proceeds through traditional humanitarian channels with Palestinian self-determination. The precedent dies before it spreads. Regional stability gradually improves through genuine peace negotiations rather than economic colonization. Scenario 2 represents the most likely outcome with approximately 60% probability. The plan proceeds in modified form with cosmetic changes designed to address international criticism. Palestinian displacement continues but gets rebranded as voluntary relocation with economic incentives. Resort development moves forward on a smaller scale with token Palestinian participation in lower-level employment. The precedent gets established but appears more palatable to international observers. Scenario 3 represents the nightmare scenario with 25% probability. The plan implements in full with minimal international interference. Gaza becomes the prototype for conflict zone monetization that gets exported globally. Palestinian identity gets completely erased from their ancestral homeland. International law becomes subordinate to international investment. Humanitarian crises become business opportunities managed by development corporations rather than aid organizations. But here is what determines which scenario we get. Here is what decides whether ethnic cleansing becomes a profitable business model or gets stopped before it spreads.